construction management team to hear estimates for different portions of the project as we begin making some hard decisions about what stays and what goes. I'm just going to go around quickly and sort of introduce everybody so that we can know who's here. Next to me is the Vice President of the Board, Brenda Hastings, and the Secretary of the Board, Kara Meeker. Rick Brewster, who's been bringing his great construction expertise to the Building Committee, Jay Burgess from the city, Kate Vaughn, a parent at Broken Ground, Dana Adams, who's also been offering his construction expertise, Lisa Bodwin, who brings background in the disability advocacy community, Linda O'Rourke, who is a teacher at Runlet, and Nicole Fox, who is an engineer and has been helping us with that. We have Holly Miller from the architectural firm, as well as Tina, and then Keith Kelly from Harvey Construction. Back there we have Kathleen Murphy, the superintendent, Jay Richard, our middle school vice principal, Matt Cashman, our facilities manager, and Terry Wolf, the communications manager for the district, Jack Dunn, our finance manager, and then board members Liz Boucher, Jess Campbell, Sarah Robinson, Bob Cotton, Barb Higgins, and Jay Richards.
Let's give a round of applause to Tam for getting all of that. I couldn't have
Jim Richards, timid.
Jay and I just send them back and forth.
And I'm going to turn it right over to our architecture crew and construction crew to walk us through their presentation.
Is this all behind it? Do we have
It will,
a
of
copy?
course, be behind you.
No?
I don't think.
Do you have hard copies of this for us to look at or not?
We did that.
Okay.
Glad it's not me. For a change. Sorry.
He didn't want to have any proof.
No paper trails.
No paper.
Well, I do have a hard copy of the number here sitting next to me. So
Okay.
really important stuff.
That's the important stuff.
This is just to hold us in suspense for just a little while longer.
It really is.
It adds to
all
the
set.
gravitas.
And I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting presentation, but I brought chocolate for the board members. Should they need a small pick-me-up.
Sorry, building committee.
Sorry, guys. I didn't know. I didn't bring it up to everybody. Sorry, you can't have it.
Into smaller pieces and make it go. I'm willing to share.
You guys only get half of
Because
them.
I stopped for a Sunday on the way here.
Where? Lisa knows how to live.
Grant State.
Oh, that's a high quality Sunday right there.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to prep for these meetings.
This is not a paper.
Hopefully you don't have a sugar patch in the middle of it.
You want to.
There we go.
Oh, that's going to be so much fun.
All right, you got something?
Hey, there we go. Way to go, Jack.
Just stand up there.
You just have to stand there.
Hug that flag.
Okay. I'm glad you got a haircut,
You'll
Jack.
see me
That's
plenty
good.
That must be what did this.
Hindsight, yeah.
That's it.
Terry's take a charge.
Yeah.
I know. Did you not just tell
Yeah.
them?
Just
He's the communications person.
communications person doesn't trust him.
You need a piece of paper to stand on?
No. Now you're jumping into your teams.
Teams always pops open.
Way up there.
Yeah.
Let's wait a couple minutes, I'll run it till.
All right.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep, we're ready. So we did the one. Oh, yeah. Almost. No. Yeah. All right. We did that? Okay.
All right.
To be. Okay, so we just want to give you an overview of where we are in the process. So we just wrapped up schematic design and, the estimating period, the schematic design estimating period. The next step would be to, set a project budget and then move into design development. Design development is targeted for July through November of this year. Another estimate would be done at the end of design development. And then we would move into construction documents in January of 2025, wrapping up in November of 2025 for construction start in December of 2025. And that is all based on the DOE funding cycle. So again, just an overview. The schematic design period's been about 6 months. Design development would be about another 6 months, and then actually I think that's wrong. Construction documents would be a 10-month period. So there's going to be time for additional input throughout the whole process. And as we mentioned, there'll be an estimate that will be done at the end of each major phase. So another estimate at DD at the end of this year, and then an estimate at 60% construction documents. The bidding period's about 2 months, and construction is anywhere from 24 to 28 months, I think is the current estimate. This is sort of,
Think?
These slides.
they will be on the website. I know they will be posted after. This is sort of a detailed description of what happens in each phase. We're not going to go through this in any detail right now, but this will be posted on the website. So if you have questions, but in each phase, we develop more detail, and as I mentioned, another estimate is completed. So we'll keep sort of drilling down on the details as we move through each phase of the project. And just a reminder that, we have developed some design goals for the project, and those design goals have been developed through a lot of community visioning, meetings with teachers, meeting with the board, and with the school building committee. And at each stage of the process, we'll go back to these goals, and these goals will help us make decisions as we move forward. So these are the priorities that have been established by the team over the course of many years.
Okay.
That was an
Told
expected
you we were
size.
gonna be-
Cost estimate information. I'll tell you that a lot of work went into the estimates. It was great to onboard Harvey and their team. So our estimators did an estimate, Harvey's team did an estimate. And then we spent a full day going through all the scope and making sure everybody's carrying all the same things. We're comparing apples to apples.
All right.
PMNC is our estimator. Their number was high. Harvey's was a bit lower, and we reconciled to somewhere in the middle. So I'll wait for everybody to get their handouts.
A much better version.
I'm like, I forgot my reader.
So if you look at the spreadsheet, you can see at the top, the number is 131, 347, 270. And that is the construction cost. And we're showing it in two different columns. The purple column is what we're calling a low column, and the green is high. So we promised with this estimate that we would bring you a whole list of alternates and pull out their prices individually. And so on the purple column, it's taking pretty much every one of the VE items or alternate items. And if there's multiple versions, like when we price the different size theaters, it's taking the biggest one. To get down to a bottom number, if you look under other, total construction cost of 107, 648, 895. And then if you add in soft costs to that, your all-in number would be 136, 234, 826. So that is roughly $40 million lower than where we were when we submitted for building aid. Again, that takes all of this VE. So on the high side, if you go down the list, it doesn't take any of the VE. It actually adds in a few other things. We priced a ramp to take you from the second floor down to the ground level, and that came in at $3.7 million. So we've added that into this column. We've also added in snow melt for the exterior plazas. We added in irrigation for the fields, and an abutter's fence. And so that grand total comes to 136,89, 758. And when you add the soft cost to those, it's 166, 666, 549. That's about, almost $10 million lower than where we were for the funding submission. So we can kind of walk through the different items, and I would say not all of these would be necessarily VE. Some of them could be what we call an ad alternate. So things like the fields, for example, could be designed in the project, and then we could take them out, and at bid time, if our bids come in really favorably, we could put them back in. You could also put them back in when, you get out of the ground. So if you got your foundations in the ground, your risk goes down, and you can evaluate what your contingency looks like at that point, and you can put them in. Now, we're not suggesting you do any of this tonight, taking any of these things or moving any from a VE column to an ad alternate. I think there's still a process in place that we're gonna talk about after this estimate. There's multiple committees that are set up that need to look at this information. The school needs to look at it. We need to weigh, what's at stake here and decide, where we wanna be with the budget. So there's still quite a bit of work to do. I'm happy to walk through item by item if that's helpful for people. Yes, okay. So,
I would like to know about what is the soft cost? What's that represent? Is that the desk, tables, chairs, and all of that?
Yep.
Or is that something
Go to the
else?
next slide, please.
So it's a good question. So basically, the hard cost, the construction cost is, the labor and materials to build the building and all of the site work. That's Harvey's costs. The soft costs take into account pretty much everything else. So the design team fees, legal and accounting, land cost surveying, financing, security. There'll also be testing that needs to be done by third party. And yes, it does include furniture, fixtures, equipment, and also, any sort of computer, IT tech stuff that we put into the building. Yes.
A quick question, contingencies, are any of those in, okay, I don't wanna be too far.
That's what's missing from this list. I was
Okay.
just about to say that. Contingency from the owner's side would be in the soft costs. Harvey's got contingency in the construction side of it. So that remains in there.
Now,
Yep.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go to Mr. Adams, we'll come back to you.
he'll probably ask the same question, so let him go.
So, we'll let him go first.
So is the $131 million that's at the top of the line, is that the base cost, and then these are the options to that? Is that where we're coming from?
Yep, so 131
Yeah.
is what we came up with for a reconciled cost estimate between the
Okay.
two estimators. And then anything that's in the purple column makes that number lower, so you get down to, a construction cost of 107 and change, if
Yeah.
you take everything. And then on the other side, if you add back in those few things that I mentioned, you get to 136 and
Okay.
change.
And is there gonna be a breakdown of the 131 that's handed out as well along with this? I'm assuming that's where the contingency is?
There's contingency in the soft cost for the owner side, and there's contingency in the construction cost. So right now, there's a design contingency that's in there because schematic design,
Yeah, yeah.
our drawings don't have everything we need to have, right? That's why we have this long period of time to drop all the rest of it. So as we get through DD and CDs, our design contingency goes down, and the money comes out of that pot and goes into the building. So you'll see it distributed through all the different categories. I guess.
Right, so that's where my question is like you said, it doesn't say contingency on any of this, so contingency's not on this page here, so is it all under soft costs, or is it in the construction, or is it in both?
It's in both.
It's in both.
It's in both, so like the design contingency, the contingency for the CM, any sort of escalation, all of that is in the hard cost. In the soft cost numbers, there's owner's contingency.
Can you
And-
give an approximate number of what that is?
Like a
Those
percentage,
contingencies?
maybe. There's a percentage of it you can see down under, soft costs, right underneath, so 28 million would be for the lower end and 30 million for the higher end.
That's the soft cost, but not the contingency
That's
number.
Oh, the
the amount.
contingency specifically?
Yeah.
It ranges from like, I think it's around, what do we say, 5% on the owner side, 5 to 10%. I don't have it off the top of my head.
What is it on the construction?
We're carrying 13% currently.
13%.
And that's a shared contingency between design contingency and construction manager's contingency.
That's pretty normal.
So to sound off of what he said is what we're looking for, because we're the bean counters in this group.
Yeah.
And apart from our accountant over here, but as far as the construction side, we're looking for a schedule of values is what we're looking for. So
We're
in
not,
a nutshell.
right, we're not quite there yet, but we will be developing that as we go along.
Well, they must have done it for a construction
So
cost.
there is a very detailed estimate that we built, everything off of.
Sure.
We don't have it here tonight, and if you wanna dive into the details of each of the categories, we'll have to do it at a different session.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Burgess and then are you,
My question was answered.
okay.
So-
For those of us who don't know what contingencies are, could you tell us, because there's been a lot of interest in this, so I was originally going to let the question just roll over me, but now that there's been all this energy, could you tell those of us who don't know what the contingency costs definition is?
Yeah, so it's different things on different sides of the hard versus soft. So right now, the hard costs have, what I was saying, a design contingency in it, because not everything is known to us right now, because we haven't started really detailing the building yet. So to protect the estimate, to make sure we have enough money in it, we typically say at schematic design, we carry 10%. It's kind of like a universal thing, and that money gets divided up into all the different parts and pieces of the building as we go. So by the time we bid the job, that's zero. Now, contingency on the other side has to do with construction. So both the CM and the owner will carry contingency for that phase, because things pop up. You start digging your hole in the ground to put your foundations and you hit an oil tank. You didn't know you had that, you gotta pay for it somehow. There's gonna be things that happen, the drawings will never be perfect 100%. There'll be misses, and so coordination will happen, and the owner will have to cover changes to the drawings during construction. So they pay for that out of their contingency. They can also pay for things like they might decide to change something during construction, so they have money to do that.
So the contingencies are banked into the bottom line cost?
Correct. The total project cost, yes.
Mr. Cotton? Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
And they're in each line item.
Right now, they're carried as sort of buckets. There's buckets for each side, but not in each, yes.
One of these line
Yes,
items?
they're all in that, yes.
Yes, not in the more.
Yes,
Yeah, got it.
yep.
Mr. Cotton?
Can you just explain the yes and no markings on this? I assume that if it's marked yes on the purple side, that you are including that in the estimate?
If it's marked yes on the purple side, that means we're taking it as a deduct to get to that lower number down here that you
You're
see, the
taking it as a
107.
deduct.
Correct,
From this 131.
correct,
Okay, and that's how you get to the 107.
correct. And then on the other side, which is a little confusing, and sorry about that, the X means that it's being taken as an add. So on the purple side, it's taken as a deduct. And what this will do, as we meet with our groups further and decide things are in or out, this will be sort of interactive, and we'll be able to say, okay, what if we do everything but remove the auditorium? What's that gonna do? And we can sort of calculate, where we are in the grand scheme of things. Now, there might be things that aren't on this list. We've already heard a couple of things come up in meetings in the last couple of days that we might want to entertain. So this list could get bigger, potentially.
On that, I'm sorry.
No.
On that top, when we're looking at the purple section, if we are talking about the auditorium, for example, I'm just a little confused.
Yeah.
So Mr. Cotton's question about remove auditorium is checked as yes, so we're taking that $6 million deduction.
Yes.
But then above, on lines 3 and 4, we have two different variations of an auditorium, so both of those are being built in, or I'm just confused on that?
No, so let me go through the list so I can explain to everybody. This is kind of confusing. So the first one is reducing the gym size. Right now, we're carrying the 9,000 square foot gym, and if we reduce it to 6,000 square feet, that saves 1.2 and change. So then we go to reducing the multipurpose room. Right now, we're carrying 5,000. Go to 3, you save 598. Then there's variations on the auditorium. So right now in the estimate, we're carrying the 900-seat auditorium.
When you say right now, just to clarify, when you say right now, you mean not the estimate on this piece of paper, but the original?
No. This
Means
estimate,
the 131.
the 131 includes the 900-seat auditorium with
The 131 includes the,
correct.
900 feet.
Anything without an X.
No,
Okay.
so look, only the numbers at the top, that's what the estimate reconciled to. So 131 is the number with everything that we said would be in the building. That includes the 900 seat auditorium, the 9,000 square foot gym.
5,000 square foot multi-purpose room.
Well, you've reduced the.
Oh,
room,
okay,
Right, to
okay.
6,000 square feet.
Can I ask a clarifying question real quick? There's gonna be many, but no, this one's at the very beginning, I promise, which is that, you know, we have been talking about this 176 million, which is based on the building aid application and all the things we asked for in the kitchen sink. So is the 131 incorporating everything that was in that initial proposal?
It's slightly different because since that submission to building aid, we've gone through and met with all of the teachers again. We've met with Jay, met with Kathleen, met with Matt and Jack, and we have, you know, come up with a new program. And we can go through that program with you.
That's okay.
But it's very similar,
Yeah.
but it's not exactly
So
the
it's a
same.
similar starting point
Yes.
generally that is including
Yes.
all of these features, and then we have reduction
There's a
options.
little bit more in it. I think we added, you know, a career pathway program. I think we only had 3 at one point. Very slight adds, but there's a little bit more in it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Adam?
So, I think the confusing part are the numbers. So the 131, 347, that doesn't include the soft costs. So in the
Right.
purple column, you have the 131 at the top, but then you take a bunch of credits, so you get down to 107. On the green one, you start out with the 131,
That is
you
confusing.
take different things that are adds, and you come up to 136. So if you were looking for the base design, you need to add the soft cost to it to have 3 kind of comparable numbers. So if you take just 28 or 29, which is kind of the average here, you're basically 160 with an approximate soft cost is the cost as requested. If you take the first line of value engineered items, you're at 136. If you take the second row in comparison to the original design, you're at 166. But that if you don't take any of these options at all, you're gonna be right around 160. I think that's approximate. So that's kind of the 3 different numbers. It's not 131 compared to 136.
Right.
It's really
Right.
160 compared to 136, 160 compared to 166, with different options being taken off of that base design.
And I think, Tina, when you're going through it,
Yep.
it's helpful to know what's in the 107. Because I think when we're looking, you know, that bottom line number there and trying to figure out
Yes.
what you included in that number.
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
166.8.
I just wanted to clarify, I think this is probably the case, but for everyone else, the presentations that you've made at the previous building committee meeting, that is what
Correct.
this is, that 131 is based on.
Correct.
So all of the details that you went through
Yes.
last month
Yes.
with all of that information and those fields and those auditorium and gym and all of that stuff, that's what this is based on.
Correct.
So that information is available
Yes.
for what all the
And
details
we have
of
some of
that
the
is.
drawings in here if we want to go through it again. For the fields, thank you. There's the multipurpose field. There's another multipurpose field within the track, baseball and a softball field. The 900 seat auditorium, the 6,000 square foot gym, the 5,000 square foot multipurpose room.
Right.
All those things are in the 131 number. And thank you, Dana, for clearing that up. It is roughly like 166.8 for a project cost if you don't do anything with the ins or outs. If you take the 131.
Mr. Patton?
So, I'm still a little confused, it's not surprising, but look at line number 16, if you would.
That's what I had a question.
And it seems that on the green one, we're adding it
Correct.
for 3.7. But on the purple one, it's in there too.
No,
But
it's
we're
not-
just not
it's
checked
not
off.
checked.
These
So
are
it's
adds
not-
and
so-
adds and
but the-
deducts.
So
But,
this list.
then it should be a deduct then, right?
No, because this
Because
list
it's not
is-
in the original.
all these items are either, if they're in red, they're a credit, because it's being a change that's reducing the cost. Or if they're black, it's an add, so that it is increasing increasing the cost. So like that line item for the exterior ramp option is not taken in the purple choice, so that's why it's 0. There is no add because it's not taken.
It's not in the base
Whereas in
number.
green,
Okay,
it is
Okay.
taken.
all right.
Okay.
But
I'm glad
the-
you asked that.
The credits that are taken in the purple one, you can see a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Most, or if not all of those credits are not taken in the green one. It doesn't appear.
They're not.
So if you look, just to
Okay.
go back to where we are, so when you, to get to the 107 number,
Yes.
you've reduced the gym to 6,000 square feet.
Correct.
But you've left the multi-purpose room at 5,000 square feet.
Correct. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
What is the
the
auditorium?
auditorium has been
900.
eliminated in the 107.
Right, okay,
In the
so,
107.
Oh, see, it's
Yes.
the alternatives column that you need to pay attention
Yes.
to.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
actual.
yeah,
Yes or no?
Ah,
okay.
we're learning.
So-
We're learning as
And
we
the-
go.
And the yes or no, we have a similar sheet that we use at Harvey. So the yes or no column is a trigger in the spreadsheet that moves the digits to the appropriate column so that they can be added or subtracted.
So if we had said, we're gonna keep an auditorium, but we're gonna put it down to 400 seats, it would be
Yes.
1.7,
Yes.
8 million savings,
Correct.
except we would have to add back 6 million first,
Yes.
so. So it would add 4 million to the bottom line.
Yes.
So basically, the purple price does not include any auditorium. Is that?
Correct.
It includes a stage.
The stage.
So what we had discussed with the district, now none of this is what we're suggesting you do.
Yeah, I'm just
It's
trying
just,
to-
it's
Yeah,
just
we
here
wanted
to
to,
give
we
you
wanted to see the option.
an example of how low you could go with these options or how high you could be with other options, right? And maybe it's something in the middle that you're gonna end up with. But we were talking to the district about maybe making the multi-purpose room into a performance space. So you take the theater out, you keep your multi-purpose, and it could function as a theater, could function as a wrestling room, could function as a cheerleading room. There's ways to design it that it could be multi-use.
Okay.
So that was one of the things we discussed today.
Ms. Botine, you had a question?
Just to further clarify, these are 2 examples,
Correct.
and we will mix and match and
Correct.
come up with a smorgasbord, just as a third
Correct.
clarification.
And you might even add a few things to this as we talk through it. You know, one thing we pointed out is that in the gym today at Runlet, it's actually bigger than 6,000 square feet. So if you decided to reduce the 9,000 that we're carrying now, you might want to keep it the same as what you have now and not quite go to the extreme of 6. I'm just throwing that out there. So there may be other things that we end up pricing. And these folks are gonna be on board for helping us.
Mr. Adams?
Yeah, and one of the larger items that we still have to add is the owner's contingency.
The owner's contingency.
Because that you're gonna need that. as
It's in the
part of
soft
soft
cost, he
So
said.
embedded.
It's in the
It-
soft
The
cost.
owner's contingency is in the soft
Yes.
cost.
Yes.
Okay.
Even though it wasn't on that list on the screen, it was missing, but it's in there.
All right, so now that I think we understand the sheet, you want to go through it? Oh, wait,
One more question, if I could. and
Yeah.
Just something I don't quite understand. The 14,000 square feet of snow melt, is that just a place to push snow to?
No, so we were carrying snow melt under the exterior plazas. So that, you know, in the design, we were looking at potentially having radiant heat floors. And so
Oh,
you could carry that out
okay.
into the plaza and it would help with snow control outside. Now, I should mention to you too that, you know, Monday night is the sustainability group meeting and they're gonna be discussing systems. So, RFS, our mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers are going to be putting together, life cycle cost analysis. So they've designed 3 different systems to potentially use. And now that we have the cost for each of those systems, they can take sort of all the information and show you what the payback is, you know, and how much it costs to run those systems, what maintenance will be on those, when they need to be replaced. The other thing that's not in these numbers is any kind of state, like rebates, any kind of tax incentives. So right now, there's tax incentives available for you for things like geothermal or solar panels, any kind of renewable energy source. So those are pretty significant, and we've been working with the district and with the tax advisor and we've got some info on those, and that will get cycled into the analysis that they're doing. So you'll be able to see, you know, geothermal right now is $2 million higher than the air source heat pumps for a mechanical system. But when you look at it with the tax incentives, it may actually be less expensive. So all of that has to get figured in. So that's going on right now, and Monday night, that will be a discussion with that group.
Okay.
All right.
Does sustainability also have projections on utility savings if they have geothermal? That will be,
Yes.
they'll
Yep.
project that out?
Yep, they're gonna look at everything.
That's great.
And things like the solar panels are one of those things you could take out as an ad alternate, right? Those are the things that go in last in the project, so we would design the school to be PV ready. Even if you weren't gonna put them in right away, you would want your school to be PV ready so that in the future, you could just come in and add solar panels to your building. So we'll need to take this list and sort of divide up things that could be something that's gonna have to be a decision soon versus a decision that it gets designed and it gets taken when we know we have money to do it.
So I think we're at the auditorium.
Right, so right now this takes out the entire auditorium, and it takes out the, let's see, the terrazzo at Main Street, and you have polished concrete instead. It takes out the greenhouse that was shown on the front of the building. It takes out the roof structure that we have right now, which has sort of a bend to it, sort of a two-piece system, makes that roof flat. And then if you go into the MEP FB, this is what I was talking about with the 3 different options that the engineers have designed. Right now, it's going with the least expensive, which is the, let's see.
Option 3, the air source heat pumps with supplemental boiler.
It's taking out the PV array, it's taking out any array over parking. So in order to make the building net zero, you're probably gonna need more PV than what will fit on the roof. So you'd put over, you know, parking structures. And you could do one without the other. You could put it on the building and not do the parking. And then if you go into site, it's taking out basically all of the fields and putting them into an ad alternate. It's taking out first, I think actually it's leaving one field, right?
It leaves one field,
But it takes out the turf.
yes.
So the one field would be grass instead of synthetic turf. So we did price one synthetic turf field in the estimate, because that was, we were asked to get the number for that. Let's see. So it takes out the basketball courts, and it also changes the granite curb to
What's that?
asphalt. Takes out the cell repeater. Now, that's not the BDA system that the police and fire need. This is something that makes your cell phones work better in the building, potentially. And then it's also taking out.
We don't want them using cell phones in the building anyway.
Also
Right,
taking-
Mr. Richard?
Taking out 6,000 square feet of space, so we're targeting a pretty large reduction, reorganizing some things. If you take out the auditorium, you know, and you move the multipurpose room where that goes, you could potentially shuffle things around. Maybe you take out some of the team rooms. We think there's ways that you could, you know, make the building a little bit smaller, but of course, we would come back to you with that kind of information.
Yes.
So just a couple of things, I'm just not familiar with the terminology. What would the difference between polished concrete and epoxy be? And then what's a curtain wall?
Good questions. So terrazzo, we'll have to bring pictures of these. Terrazzo's kind of
Under
a
architectural.
topping finish that goes over a concrete slab. You'll see it in a lot of the older schools. It lasts forever. It's
Okay.
beautiful. It's got kind of marble chips sprinkled in
yeah,
it.
okay.
You know, a lot of times schools are open for 100 years and it still looks great. The polished concrete would just be, you would pour the concrete slab and then you would polish it. And it's in a lot of new schools. We put it in a lot of ours. It's very easy to maintain. You just wash it with soap and water. Good surface.
And then what's a curtain wall?
Curtain wall is when you have, instead of having punched window openings like you see in this room, it's like a large expanse of glass. So right now, at the end of like the main street where the cafeteria is, we're showing kind of a glass wall that looks out into the woods.
Okay,
So it's anywhere where it's like a bigger than a window size.
thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Robinson?
Yeah, thank you. Could you please explain for me what the exterior ramp from grade to second floor would mean visually? And I also think that having a schematic for us to look at with these items, so I could like visually see what a change means, like removing an auditorium and moving a,
Yes.
like, how big is the auditorium visually? And I know that's coming.
It is.
But I think this is all gonna be a lot easier to understand as a Luddite.
Yes. Yeah, and,
You know?
and
Do we
tonight,
have
like,
the basic designs that had some of that we could put up at least for people to?
I don't know what's in here for slideshow.
We have
In there?
the plans in a 3D view. I don't think we have a image of the ramp.
Yep.
But we can bring it for the next time. We didn't assume that you were gonna make any decisions tonight.
Oh, for sure,
Like,
this
this
is
is
for
just really here to
visual
give you.
stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, yep.
Oh, okay.
But you could point out what you were thinking with the ramp if you want.
So,
This is huge.
so we looked at two different options for the ramp. We had one inside, and it was, if you can imagine, you know how you come through the main entrance there and you're in the lobby space?
Mhm.
We kind of wrapped it around and around. It's quite long. Remember how long it was?
Cause it can, like a ramp can only go up
like
2 inches
250
per
feet.
foot, right? Is that why?
It's roughly like that, but it basically took up a whole bunch of space in there. So we thought maybe there's a way to do it as an exterior ramp. So we have a design that you sort of would come out on the second floor near where the multipurpose is. And there would be kind of a bridge. And then we're talking to our landscape architects about kind of berming up the earth. So the bridge would kind of hit the earth at some point and then kind of, spiral down. Could be a beautiful landscape feature.
Okay.
And it is beautiful, but it's a little pricey. So, if it's something that the group really wants to keep pursuing, we've got to look at alternate ways of doing it, I think.
I'm curious.
And it would be just from the second floor to the first, it wouldn't be from the
To the
third.
ground.
Right, but it wouldn't be from the third floor.
Yeah, we haven't looked at that yet,
Okay.
just because this was so large.
Yeah, just clarifying.
Would it be
And-
covered?
No, we didn't have it covered in this. And it would be,
So you have to shovel it too, or
Yeah.
snow blow it.
Yeah.
and it would be, so that, the main,
200
the
plus feet
gym is
long.
up on the second floor, the auditorium's up on the second floor. In an emergency situation, folks who couldn't use the elevator because it was, shut down for the emergency could go out that way. Very rare circumstance that would happen, but we're willing to look at it in different locations, but right now that's what we priced.
Ms. Botine? And
Yeah,
Ms. Hastings?
just for members of the school board who might not know this, a number of families with, students with disabilities who have mobility issues don't necessarily see this only for emergency purposes. This is universal design so that all students can be together going from one floor to the next. And it's a way to build in inclusivity by design, so.
Although an exterior would not allow students really during. An exterior one would probably not be used during the school day as inclusive, and that
Yeah,
meant, I'm just,
The families didn't specify.
No, yeah.
The question was,
Yeah.
can a ramp be designed?
And we do have 2 elevators in the design right now. So there's, one at one end of Main Street and one at the other. And those are large enough to accommodate multiple people in them and also a stretcher if that was required.
I get the
Mr. Brewster?
inclusivity piece of it, however, think about this, this ramp is 240 feet long or more. How many people are gonna use it? And how could a handicapped person push himself up and down 240 feet of ramp in a timely fashion to get to class? It's
In the
just not
snow.
gonna happen.
I think,
It's just too long and too, it's,
We might wanna have this conversation, not right now, but most students with disabilities have motorized wheelchairs
Sure.
in the public schools, so they're,
would be
This is-
easier
this-
than not. But there's not gonna be much inclusivity, because who's gonna walk up it?
Ms. Hastings and then Ms. Fox?
I'm just double
I
checking
mean-
that in the purple column, the ramp is there, and in the green, it is not.
No, the purple column, it's not added in. It wasn't in the base 131, so it shows up when you look at the green column as taken as an ad.
Okay, and that's why there's a price on both sides. Okay, now, all right. This is not easy to follow, I'm
This
gonna be
is-
honest.
This is a Bobby spreadsheet. The next time we manipulate this, he's gonna be
Scapegoat.
here at the.
Bobby needs to do better for us.
They're
We're not
really, his
builders.
Throw
spreadsheets
Bobby
are
under the
really
bus.
good, they're just very intricate.
Yeah.
I think even like in or out would be more
Right.
helpful than yes or no. Miss
Accepted or not
Fox.
accepted.
Right, yeah,
Added,
this is
subtracted.
not-
I just, well, that's not my actual question, but I wanna defend Bobby's spreadsheet, it's good for me.
It is really good, it's just, you know.
But I can understand that not everyone spends their days in spreadsheets as I do. But so, given the incredible sensitivity to the length of the ramp, both interior or exterior is based on height, what is the height of the first floor, and is there a possibility to reduce that would bring down, probably costs in a lot of areas, but I don't know what you're talking about.
We have 15 feet now.
We're at 16 feet right now. So, you know, we could possibly reduce floor to floor. There are some spaces that might be a little bit challenged, like, you know, there are some spaces that you wanna have a slightly higher ceiling in, like the wood shop. The wood shop's on the ground floor. We would lose some height in a space like that. That might be challenging, but we can look at tightening up the floor to floor, but I don't think we typically go
Not by
much less than
much.
15.
Because of all the duct work and all the
Right.
coordination that has to happen in the ceilings.
Yeah.
You know, there's the sprinkler piping, there's the ducts, there's the lights, you know, there's just a lot going on up there, so. Any other questions?
It's certainly a lot to digest, for sure. And I'm very interested in how people who are not in this room and not sitting at this table will interpret all of this information. If it's that difficult for me to understand this spreadsheet, how are we presenting this information as a district in a way that makes it, how are we sort of like, I don't wanna be too reductive and lose, you know, the important details, but how are we as a district going to present this to the public in a way where they're not gonna go cross-eyed looking at it and then assume ill intent? Because there's still a lot of heavy emotion around this school, as there should be. It's a big decision for our community. So I just wanna be sure that there is a level of transparency when this information is coming out, so that the public feels like they're being given everything that they need to understand what's going on. Does that make sense?
Needs to be more consumable.
Yeah, which, I mean, I get it, this is like as consumable as we've been able to make it at this point. So I think maybe there's some narrative that can be added to this to do a little bit more explaining. So just trying to like, I'm trying to reflect on how do I explain this to my constituents, who are very divided. I've got two different groups of folks that are, you know, sort of contacting me about this, and how am I giving both of them the exact same information so they can understand? That's really my primary concern through this process.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, and it may be when we have our public sessions that we only have one list with the
Yeah,
variables.
yeah.
And it has it gets complicated though, because, you know, you have 3 different size auditoriums, so
Right.
the checks sort of help you say, okay, well, what if we only took the smallest reduction? Where are we like in the
scheme of
grand total?
things. Yeah.
So we'll have to brainstorm about the best way to get the information out to folks.
Yeah, I appreciate that that's extra time and energy, but I think it'll be useful in the long run
Sure.
in order to get the public. I would really like to see everyone excited about this change for our community, but we need to be cognizant of the fact that folks are very concerned about the tax implications on this. So folks really do need to be able to see, what are my tax dollars paying for? I think that's gonna be a really big bridge that we have to build.
I think we have a slide on.
Yeah, we're gonna answer that question.
We're gonna answer that before
That's
we.
great.
I figured
Before
I
we
couldn't come
get-
here without it.
You really can't.
Perfect.
Before we
segue.
get to that, is there options or information that people want to see before we get back together? You know, on these types of things, more detail, you know, I think, speak now, Ms. Robinson.
Yeah, I am not a real fan of turf. I understand its practical usage, but I also understand that it is difficult to clean, puts players at risk of infections. It's not really environmentally safe either, from what I understand. And I noticed that it is not included as a reduction on the alternative side on the purple.
It is.
It is.
Sorry,
not
I
in
know it's
either.
confusing.
It doesn't
So
say.
it's
It
zero.
is.
I was just,
No,
it's not.
If you look at
in-
17 and 18,
Yep,
17
is the one that's
it-
taken out.
Yeah.
No, 17 is an option to eliminate the field in its entirety.
Okay.
18 is change the field to grass.
Ah, thank you for that clarity.
So
I
at least
appreciate it.
one field in there and it's
Okay.
grass.
Okay,
Because
great.
it looks like
So
you're
should we-
removing the
Right,
lawn.
just-
Right, so can we take it
know.
out? If it's not in there, why
Seems
is
like
it
that-
here?
Seems like there's.
Because I think there was,
'Cause that
people
was if you-
expressed interest in it,
Well,
and
I
so
think
we
it's in
got
there
the
as a
cost.
Well,
synthetic
because-
field.
It's an
I think
option.
because below it, you have the track and lawn field is taken out, and the baseball and softball field is
Right.
taken out. So that's the, I mean, I don't know if that was the only field, but that's the only remaining field in that lower option. So you don't have, like we talked about last time, Mr. Richard was saying that they needed a substantial number of fields. If not, the kids, you're now gonna be entertaining busing all the kids to other fields somewhere in Concord for all the after-school sports at a significant cost and difficulty. So if we take all the fields out, we're simply robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're gonna not pay for fields, instead we're gonna pay for busing.
Transportation. Yep.
Every single year. And the question is, what fields are we gonna use if the fields at Runlet go away in their current rendition? Cause it has some other use. The fields at Memorial are already being used by the high school. There are other facilities in Concord, like at the parks, that the rec department uses. If we try to use those, then the rec department can't. So it's creating a juggling, you know, a shell game as to where this is all gonna happen. So
Right.
if you get rid of the fields, you create just another problem.
Yeah.
But the only field left, if I read this correctly, is one field is left as grass, and that's it in this lower estimate. Whereas in the upper estimate, all the fields are
All
left.
the fields are in, including
Including a turf field.
Including a
fields.
turf
And a
Yep.
track.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Again, not our proposal to you, just giving you the two extremes.
Bunch of a la carte
Options.
options.
Exactly.
I think what helps explain this a little bit, and Dana hit on it a little bit earlier, is the hindsight being what it is. A third column would have been the base bid at 131, plus its soft costs is $160.8 million.
And on the items that are listed here, if it was kind of broken up, like you could have the auditorium at 9,000 square feet, and kinda like you have with the options here, if you have the, kind of the base bid, 9,000 square foot auditorium included.
Yeah.
Option one,
Take it out.
no auditorium at all.
So-
Option two shows it
Right,
included,
so-
so you can see what's going in and out.
The difficulty with that is we have 1,800 options, right? So that's what we don't wanna get
Yeah,
into,
yeah.
right? Because that's the reality of it. We're gonna make decisions and have these conversations throughout this whole process over the next year and a half.
Yeah.
That we can't do that without the participation of all the people that are making decisions
Yep.
relative to this project, right? So these are two examples of the least expensive option and the quote, most expensive option, and what that impact looks like to the taxpayers that Jack's gonna get to talk about. But
Right.
I've had success in other projects by doing a similar spreadsheet that we do and doing it live on the screen, so that when you check that box, it changes the
That's
bottom
how,
number.
that's
and
Bob
that kind of
when he
stuff,
sits
right?
here.
So that's where we can have that
That's
dialogue.
what
It
I'm
says,
looking forward
I
to.
want a
Pam, can I ask
450
a
square,
question? That's the
450
next
person
meeting. Yeah.
auditorium, and 6,000 square, you know, that's where we can start doing that live with not necessarily this environment, but the next environment or wherever that
Right,
interaction
that's
is. So that's where I think we missed a little bit in the confusion here, but
Yeah.
we're talking about a range in project from 136 million to 166 million.
Okay.
Ms. Meeker.
So, piggybacking on what Sarah was just saying about communicating with the community, we have a Q&A coming up very soon. I I hope we can maybe look at some visuals before the public sees them so that we're feeling good about what the public understands is the floor, right? Because from my understanding, 136 is now the floor. If we get rid of all of the other things. I absolutely have constituents who are gonna tell me to go further into the floor.
That's not the floor.
Yeah, so,
They're gonna find ways to save and cut, and we're gonna guide them as well as,
It's the cap, what we're talking about is choosing the cap,
this is the first block.
So-
We're a long ways from the end.
so the cap will range from 136 to 166, depending on what we,
The
So-
goal is for the
not-
July
it's
deadline
not
of
the-
establishing a project budget. That's the cap that is being referenced by Ms. Walsh, is that, we need to work off of that. Not only we, Harvey, but we, HMFH,
Yep.
tongue twister. We need to have that established, and that's what the July date's gonna get us to, we hope.
July 1 or 31?
It's 15, I think is the
Okay.
schedule.
July 15.
Yeah.
is when the board is,
So that's the target
Scheduled
budget,
to
and
meet.
that sets it. We are not gonna go any higher than that.
Yep.
We're gonna design to it, we're gonna build to it, we're gonna make recommendations, we're gonna bring it back to the various committees and boards and say, hey, what if we entertain this type of enclosure, or this type of product, or this type of layout, or what? Those are all the conversations we're gonna have, but we need to establish how far can we go? Not that we're gonna go there, but we need to know how far we can go
Yeah.
as a collective
and
that's gonna work.
based on the percentages, this number includes 20 million-ish of contingencies, so hopefully that will be, we'd have to have a lot of things go wrong to spend that much in contingency.
Yes, and those will change as the design develops, as Tina had
But I
mentioned.
did want to ask, have we scrubbed the soft cost portion of it at this point? So the soft costs are still higher than, does it still have land in the?
Financially is not scrubbed because it's all an estimate.
Right, but the 176 million included the price of fill and land purchases?
That's that.
That's out, that's the question I was asking.
WISO,
Oh, yeah, that's,
Yep.
oh, yeah,
Yep.
that's gone.
long gone.
There are some tests that we still need to run with the site, so there's some contingency numbers in there that'll go away in the next couple months after we have to do a seismic test out there. If you decide to go with the geothermal system, we'll need to do a test well before we can say 100% that that's gonna be okay, cause we don't know if it'll function out there, or if you're gonna need more wells than what we're saying in the base design, so there is still more things that need to happen, and some of that's in the soft costs right now, that sort of uncertainties, so.
So, just what other options, data do folks want before we get together again, before we go into the financial portion of it?
We can show you the designs again of the different theater options. That's probably gonna be helpful for you all to see. What the size reduction in the gym looks like, multipurpose room. And those are the things that, in order for us to move forward in the design, we'll need to know what we're doing. Like, we can't proceed into DD and, design a range of theater sizes. We'll have to know what that's gonna be. We don't have to have everything figured out, like I said, there's things that we could put into the ad alternates. But those programmatic pieces we'll need to know.
Mr. Cotton?
So I think one thing that it might be helpful, speaking specifically about the athletic fields and maybe the greenhouse, would be, what's the incremental increase in cost if we decide to do it later? I mean, as opposed to doing it all now.
Yeah.
If we decide to build one field now and wait 3 years and build another field, I know cost will vary, but is there anything that we should be thinking about beyond just doing it all at once?
Yeah, I mean, your fields are gonna be at the end of the project anyway, so at that point, you'll feel better about how much contingency you have left. The elementary schools, I know, came in under budget, so y'all didn't, you didn't bond for the whole amount. But in this case, you could potentially say, okay, we have that much money left, we're gonna build all the fields out there. You could start off with 2 or 3, or whatever you feel comfortable with.
And to address your comment about that there is added cost by waiting, you know, nothing,
Sure.
nothing goes down, as we all know.
Well, nothing goes down, but I'm thinking more, I don't know how to articulate this. I mean,
Bringing people back
bringing
to.
people back
Yes.
to a site and all
Yes.
that kind of thing.
Yep, there's a premium to that,
Gonna
exactly.
increase.
Yep.
And just to piggyback on Mr. Cotton, some things have higher incremental costs and some things have lower, so it would be good to know what the things are that have much higher incremental costs if we delay construction.
I'd like to have that crystal ball, but we're gonna do our best to tell you what that might be.
Yeah, I mean, escalation right now is about 3.5% a year. So you can use that as kind of a rough number. It's down from what it was during the pandemic for sure, so.
Other questions, comments, requests? Mr. Adams?
I mean, I think it would be helpful if they could put together some sense for like the fields and or the auditorium. You know, if we don't build the fields, what's that truly gonna cost? What's it gonna cost for the transportation if we don't have an auditorium? What's the impact of that and what's that gonna cost? Because we're gonna be asked to make those decisions to possibly, I mean, it's one thing to say we're leaving it to the end, which you can. But if you say, oh, we don't have the money, the reality is your operating costs are gonna jump significantly if you don't build those fields. So if you, at the end, for whatever reason, you don't have the money to build the fields, so you decide to cut them, all that's gonna happen is the next year, when you go for your yearly budget, you're gonna see a huge bump because you can say, oh, we have to transport all the kids. Or cut programs.
Transportation is already a sticking point for our budget. It's already a huge issue, for
Which
sure.
is gonna
It's gonna
be a
escalate.
significant
Yeah.
increase, I would think, given the number of teams, because I think you said that there's
There's
how many
three
programs a
girls'
season?
soccer- Yeah, there's a lot of teams and stuff. It was a profound impact, actually.
So, yeah, because you're talking about adding more for the baseball and softball and stuff, so having some sense as to what that cost is an important component when you're trying to decide whether we're gonna keep something or cut something. Same thing with the auditorium.
Yeah.
How often is that room gonna be used? If you don't have the auditorium, what's gonna happen for the programs? Where are they gonna be? Are they gonna be at the high school? Are they gonna be at
Right.
the Audi? Are they gonna be at the Capitol Center? What are the costs associated with that? Are we paying more to rent to put spaces or significantly less to rent and build? So,
I'm putting on a show last month, so you're gonna have to transport kids for all of their rehearsals and all of that.
I
too.
mean, we do not have an auditorium at the current middle school. And, but they manage to have shows and whatnot, so I'm just saying that.
Big stage, remember the big stage at Rutland? It was
That's
huge.
not, yeah, it's not there anymore, is it?
They gutted it and did not replace it. No, it didn't help.
So, but,
but understanding.
so
those
we don't go to
costs
the
is
Capitol
important.
Center for the Runlet productions, is what I'm saying.
To follow on Mr. Adams,
Yeah.
you know, we eliminate the PV array of roof mounted and ground mounted kit. There's a replacement energy cost that would have to be factored in there that we'd look at it and say, yes, we saved this much upfront, but we will pay this much estimated going forward because we don't have that offset.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
and
it's-
those are key.
It's the same thing like when we look at the option for the ground source, the heat pump system, it's that life cycle cost analysis in terms of what is it gonna cost over the life of the building? Is it,
Right.
you might, if you pay more now, but in year 5, you're not paying anymore and you're getting it for free, if you will.
Well, and those are numbers you're gonna bring to the Sustainability Committee on Monday, and we will
Correct.
get some recommendations and the numbers.
Yep.
I think it's also important context to remember that this is a public building and it is not just a middle school. Like, this is supposed to be accessible for the entire community for use. So when we're looking at it through that lens, how is this infrastructure supporting all of the things that we have going on in our community? And where we lack certain things in our high school or in our elementary schools, this can be an opportunity to make up those gaps so that future construction, which is inevitable, does not have to rely on those elements. And in the future, it's gonna cost more. That's science, you know, like inflation happens. So if we can look at it as a way to mitigate future needs, and ultimately long-term savings, keeping that in mind, I think is a decent way of looking at what these options
could mean long-term. Does that make sense?
When we're looking at the options, it'd be helpful to have what is reducing the gym to the current gym size at Runlet, since we might end up there, to know what that option is. Yes.
Just wanted to add that in addition to financial costs, if we go to transporting students around for fields, there's also carbon costs. And if we're thinking about, you know, what are the opportunities and what are the challenges in this project, we do need to bear in mind that it's not just about dollars and cents. There are other factors at play too.
Okay. Mr. Dunn? I think we,
Okay. Can you go back to that, the hard cost, soft cost, then the next slide after that? Bingo. Next one, yep, thank you. Okay. So this is similar to a slide that I presented to the Chamber of Commerce last September, so we've updated that. To give you an idea, oh yeah, I'm sorry.
This is the important
If
stuff.
I take you.
Yes.
Yeah, because.
Speaking of the mic.
Yes. Okay. So, we've updated this slide, and we're gonna show you 3 scenarios, and there's still an awful lot of work to do for funding this. So I'll start first with the column to the left. New middle school, no building aid, Concord taxpayers pick up 100% of the cost. All right? You go to the low end, which was the 136, 234, 826 that's on your little sheet, all the way up to the max cost of 166, 666, 549. That tax impact, again, no state building, nothing. This is just go and spend it. $1.60 to $2.09 per thousand. On a $350,000 home, that is a $560 to a $732 increase in year 1. Okay? That's one. The middle column, this assumes you get building aid, which right now on the published website, if it were to come back, well, I mean, the moratorium's lifted, if it's funded by the legislature, we have got a 40% entitlement. That is about $47.5 million. Concord pays 60%, the state picks up 40. That range now becomes the 136, 234 is now 87,690,000. Okay? The 166 comes down to 118, 122. That gives you a potential tax impact of 82 cents for the 87 million to $1.31 for the 118 million. A $350,000 home, that first year impact is $280 to $455. Okay? Third, you get state building aid and you use the board's facilities and renovation trust fund. That would bring the project that is the 87 to the 118 after building aid to a tax impact of 9 cents per thousand to 59 cents per thousand, or $32 to $207 based on a $350,000 home.
Ms. Robinson.
So obviously, I want the last option. Because the first one is untenable, honestly. Like, I can't see, how many homes in Concord right now are even assessed at $350? It's just not rational.
350,000.
I apologize.
Yeah.
You knew what I meant.
Yeah,
We're
I
all
just
looking at the same page.
clarifying.
But still, like, I don't know any homes in Concord that are assessed at that value anymore. And with all of this coming through, we get new assessments all the time. My house was just reassessed, and the impact, we felt it. We're feeling it. Could you use the facility trust fund to mitigate tax impact on that first column? Or is this like the first column is worst case scenario?
Correct.
Okay.
You get no building aid, you're not using anything. But now we get into the combination of, as I mentioned before, when we did the elementary project, we did 29 different bond schedules. I've just done the second one tonight for you.
Okay.
So we got a ways to go.
So there's a lot of different scenarios. So it's sort of the best to the worst.
All right, because the worst,
there's-
that dog won't hunt.
Well, and that is why we are not making a final decision on moving forward with this project until we find out about building aid next year.
Right.
Ms.
Well, and
O'Rourke.
that's my question. There's a lot of if.
Yeah.
What is the reality that we don't get building aid?
Well, we're number 2 on the list, behind Colebrook, okay? We are grandfathered, I don't want to use that term. We are on the approved list.
Okay.
If the legislature were to fund it, the final rules will be, I think, done in July. They're coming here August 12th, Amy Clark from the DOE. But if the legislature were to fully fund it, we'd potentially get our money.
But we
It's going to depend on what we don't know. We won't know until, we'll have some indicators prior, but July 1, 2025, that biannuum, if they fund it, we will know.
It's a long way away.
Yeah, we have to go through the whole budget cycle in the legislature before we know for sure,
And
even
an
how much they're
election
gonna
in
put
the-
into
Well,
For the
a year from now,
legislature.
you're going to have a pretty strong indication of where the thing sits. I mean,
Mr. Adams.
The facility trust fund,
mhm.
obviously, if you apply it to the first one, it lowers those about 73 cents per
Sure.
thousand.
Mhm.
What's the downside of using that? How's that gonna hamper you if you use that, like?
Oh, you
state
can't.
is-
I just wanted to show you, you're just going at it to state building aid and that, to the facilities. I could do any combination, as I
Right,
said.
But
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's using all of that's available?
Absolutely, yeah.
So how's that gonna hamper it? Let's play the worst case scenario and the state doesn't fund it.
Yeah.
And as Ms. Robinson says,
Yeah, I'll do that.
The 560 to 732 is just not attainable, so therefore,
Mhm.
either the project dies, or everybody's gonna say, we don't want that, so then you look at doing that, but how is that gonna hamper the school district if you use that entire trust fund?
It doesn't. The plan
We've
is to
been
use it.
saving it for this.
That's the whole purpose of it, is to use it, not save it.
Okay.
I was gonna say that we've been increasing that trust fund in anticipation, right? If, we used it all and a tornado came through and there was no government to help us or nothing else on that, well, then we'd have to bond immediately and go into that. So it would add to that initial thing. So it just takes away that insurance policy, but we've been managing that similar to the way we did with the elementary school projects to increase that, to offset that.
To
right?
create a buffer.
To create the buffer, yeah.
Ms. Hastings.
Am I correct in saying that that trust fund only exists because of our autonomy?
I'm not gonna, that's,
Would we
The board's
have that
autonomy
if
to
we
choose to
didn't
do
have
so.
autonomy? Can
I would
school
argue
district-
you probably would not. Towns that have tried to create that, it gets shot down. It's very unique in what you've done back to 2005.
Ms. Redding.
Can you tell us how much is in it? 'Cause I'm not familiar with.
Come next June, there'll be $16 million in there. And that is what we're using to mitigate those spikes. That was the purpose of it.
Other questions? You wanna go on? Jack, you wanna?
Yep. So in the next slide, it's really more for you to read. It just gives you kind of a synopsis, what these estimates are based on community feedback, what the school is, and what that range is. But again, it's important to note that these numbers are very early estimates. As I mentioned, in 2010, the school board analyzed 29 different bond schedules, and that some of them were 29A, B, C, D, E. I mean, a variety of different options will be presented before authorizing the debt. And again, this is only the second option, single, that I've shown so far. And I put links to the DOE so you could see where we are and where we're ranked and everything. The numbers that I'm using are conservative numbers by our financial advisor at 30 years at 4.5%, assuming bonding in December of 2025. Okay? Upcoming meeting?
Yes. Next week, the Sustainability Working Group is going to meet and hopefully come back with recommendations to us on what is the best short and long-term investment in terms of our HVAC systems. that will be here. On Tuesday, we're holding a Q&A for the public, an informational session on the preliminary design and the costs. Building committees members are welcome to come or to watch it on YouTube after the fact. That will be 6 p.m. at Millbrook School. On Wednesday at the high school, the programming working group will meet again just in case, and if they have any additional feedback to bring us. And then on the 18th at 6 p.m. at the high school, where Concord TV can broadcast live, we will have a second public informational session. And then we will have another session here on the 20th on of this group. If there is information that you would like beforehand, that would be, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask for it so that we can start working. We have also saved a couple of tentative dates for follow-up meetings the second week in July, if we need them, either for the full group or just the board. And the goal is that the board will hold a public meeting on the 15th of July for the purpose of setting the project cap.
So on the day that it's due?
Well, it's our due date, so we're gonna, when he said that's the date, like, that's the date we set that we're gonna hold that meeting. The board is gonna hold the meeting.
Clarifying question, when does the public get to comment on the cap?
So the 15th, we are gonna hold those two informational sessions. I'm sure we will hear some comments then as well. And then the 15th is a public meeting and a public hearing. We've also reserved the 17th to continue our meeting if it gets late at night and we wanna regroup before we actually vote. So that is the plan for the next 6 weeks of togetherness.
So we'll go to the next steps, just to reiterate. So you have the meetings with the sustainability group, program working group, community, and the Q&As are all going to happen over the next month. Again, costs will be updated based on that feedback. And then this group will get back together on June 20th. But the critical decisions that'll need to be made in the next several weeks will be the size and scope of the auditorium, the gymnasium, multi-purpose room, and the heating and ventilating systems that you're going to put in.
And fields.
And fields, but the high dollar items are right there. Fields,
Yeah.
you can adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you design the building, it's harder to go backwards.
Who is the sustainability working group?
It is a number of community members who have expertise in energy installation, HVAC systems, very technical people who work in that field and have some knowledge of that. So they will make a recommendation. We can choose to listen or not, but that hopefully they will give some good advice. And Ms. Boucher is chairing that group. Ms. Meeker.
Jack, could we have, when we create this visual again, can we have a column for if we don't get building aid, but we do utilize the trust fund?
Yes.
And then also, I feel like in the past you've shown us, like, you're showing us the first year assessment, but it's intended to decline over time.
It goes down every year after that,
Right,
yes.
so I think maybe to stop our friends from having heart attacks, we could like show them how it decreases over the life
So,
of the
yeah,
bond.
I have to share with the board what I've put together.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It would
I have
also
that.
be helpful to get a breakdown of the soft costs, I think.
Sure.
Yep. And if you could actually email that around so that we have it before the Q&A next week, that
Sure.
would be great.
And just on the soft
Yeah.
costs, I mean, that includes money that's already been spent, right?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
And all of this is outside of our service contract, right? Like the $10 million contract for their services is outside of this cost, right?
It's built in, it's in that.
It's in here.
That's
It's
all-
part
yep,
of these
It's all part
costs.
of it, it's
It's
not
part of
over and
these
above.
Great,
Yeah.
that's excellent.
No, the money we've already spent is in these numbers.
Okay.
Correct.
That's good to know. Ooh, wee, y'all.
I just want to say thank you to the building committee.
Yes.
Questions
Yeah.
you asked were very helpful and insightful, so just thank you so much.
Yeah, really appreciate all of your expertise at the table. It makes a lot of difference for us, for sure.
Can I just ask, how's everybody feeling about this?
Yeah, can we
these
get a temperature
numbers.
check?
Yeah. Like, I'm still overwhelmed by it. It still feels like a very big number to me, but this is not my field or expertise. So I don't know, I just maybe want to check in and see how's everybody feeling about this.
Don't everybody jump at once.
Well, from a construction
better than
standpoint, I know
176.
that this is the first peak under the tent, and it's gonna come full circle 15 different ways from Sunday, but at the end of the day, I think we will be able to achieve a much better price than we are right here today. But everybody is protecting themselves, and as they need
Right.
to at this point, because the design is not complete, it's not even close to complete. It's just a concept, it's a cocktail napkin drawing, is all you got. And he's trying to put together a $150 million bid on a cocktail napkin.
Right.
And so he doesn't know anymore today, and I like his phrase about the crystal ball, but I always tell him mine's out for repair. So, I can't begin to tell you what the prices are gonna do in the next 18 months to 2 years. I mean, and I was in the business for 50-odd years as an estimator. I did his job for a long time, and people would ask you all the time. And unfortunately, the number they remember is the first one you gave them. So you don't ever want to give them one that's not realistic, because they're not going to forget that. So he's protecting himself, as he should, because again, the design is not complete. They don't know if it's an indoor ramp, they don't know if it's an outdoor ramp, they don't even know if it's going to be a ramp. We may go back to the set of stairs and the 2 elevators and realize that that's going to have to do, because the budget doesn't allow, and the circumstances where it's 200 and some odd feet of ramp is just not realistic. You're using up too much valuable space that could have been 2 more classrooms, honestly. I mean, it's that much of a big deal. The ramp's important, I know, I get it, but you also have to look at the reality of what's the cost of it, and is this the best use of our tax dollars? And the primary reason I came to this, want to be on this board, is I'm a taxpayer here in Concord as well. And I have some knowledge about construction, so I have ideas that I might be able to offer up that might suggest an alternative way that may or may not help improve the budget. And that's really my primary reason for being here. Granted, you know, I like to help all my neighbors too, but I'm cheap. And I don't want to spend that kind of money if I don't have to. So I'm here to help him and everyone else here guide the budget to a more realistic one so that I can continue to live in this town. So that's why I'm here.
Ms. O'Rourke.
So to answer your question about how I'm feeling, I'm nervous. The not guarantee of the aid petrifies me, because I can't tell you how many times a day when I don't have enough outlets in my room, or my classroom is 92 degrees, because that's what the temperature hits, and I tell myself, 4 more years, I can do this. That petrifies me that it may have to be more than 4 more years. So that's how I'm feeling.
So call your legislators.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ms. Odine.
I'm also feeling nervous. I'm really thinking about everyone on a fixed income in this city, one of whom is my son, who, if the worst case scenario comes to pass, the trustees of his special needs trust are gonna ask me about selling the condo that is supposed to be his forever home, because that number is not tenable.
Yep.
And when I think of all the seniors in this city who are struggling, and, you know, I volunteer at the Friendly Kitchen, I know that there are seniors, yeah, anyway, so.
So I agree, and, you know, I do think it's just important to reiterate that, you know, we have undertaken this process because we want to be ready and be able to take advantage of building aid should it become available. And that is one of the unique things that Concord can do that other towns can't do, which is we can move quickly and we can be prepared. But this board has deliberately said that it is not going to decide whether to go forward with this project, and I know that I get your your pain. until we know the answer to that, because we know that without building aid, it may not be financially feasible for taxpayers. Ms. Fox?
You'll all be impeached.
Too late. So,
Rightfully so.
you know, I share the concerns that the costs are still high. I really appreciate the breakdown of all the different pieces and the additional ones that you're gonna be able to bring to us. I do appreciate the fact that there is a lot of contingency in there and that there's a really valid point about you wanna bring your highest number now and you can go down because no one ever gets mad when the price comes down, but they get, I can't even imagine what would happen in this city if the price went up. So, you know, I think again, the building aid, the tax implications are huge. But I am glad to see the costs coming down and some options that we can realistically talk about. You know, some of which I think are probably really good to do, but we also want to make sure that we're taking into account the needs of the students that we're trying to educate. And, you know, last night I was at the high school concert at the Capitol Center because the high school doesn't have a space big enough for that concert. So that's, and I think that concert was actually paid for in a different way, but in general, when we do rent that out, that costs money. Like there's a lot of these operational costs that we need to be cognizant of as well, so.
Very true.
In a few minutes left, would you like to see a comparison to Nashua?
I was just about to ask for that. Thank you very much, because Nashua has come up a lot, so.
Yes, it does, so let's get to it.
Brilliant minds, people like it, huh?
Mind meld around here.
Sorry, I got too fast.
We may have talked this afternoon.
There you go. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Okay. Do you want me to take it? You wanna take it?
I can talk to this. So this is a comparison. We have heard a lot of comparisons to the new high school in Nashua. It's roughly about the same size, slightly smaller population, but there are a few big differences between the school in Nashua and Concord needs. So the first thing is Nashua has a gymnasium, of course, but it's a little bit smaller than what we've been looking at. It's about 8,000 square feet versus our 9. It doesn't have a multi-purpose PE room. It doesn't have a fitness room. It has only 2 art classrooms versus 3 that Concord currently has and needs. It only has 2 music rooms versus the 4 music rooms that Concord currently has and has programmed. It doesn't have a theater, and it has quite a few more classrooms. It has about 58 classrooms versus the Concord program, which has 45. That number is really the result. I think there's a special education program that resides in the Nashua Middle School. So the classrooms are sort of less expensive to build than these specialty spaces like a gymnasium or a theater, right? So they're, you know, it's about the same square footage, but the proportion of sort of high dollar spaces is very different than what was built in Nashua. And Keith can talk to that.
And Nashua
in more
also
detail.
has multiple middle schools and multiple high schools that have beautiful, brand-new high schools that have beautiful auditoriums and gyms that I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Harvey's been involved with almost all the schools in Nashua, so we're just about to turn this over this summer. They're gonna bring in new students in the fall. And to Molly's point is the comparing, we like to go to cost per square foot as a comparison. Like that's the immediate place in this conversation, right? But even cost per square foot are sometimes apples and oranges, or as Jack like to say, apples and giraffes. They can be that far apart because of, I go to the bottom line. When there's 58 classrooms in that building of the same square footage, and there's 45 classrooms in the building that you're proposing at the square footage, the ratio of classroom to every other space is 22% difference. So there's a quarter of the building is somewhere other than classrooms, which is really 4 walls and a mechanical system and lighting and all that kind of stuff, but it's not expensive square footage. So it's tough to look at those costs per square foot as a absolute, but those costs are coming in today at the low 400, between $400 and $450 a square foot. We're at 495 or 625 at each end. So we're not too far off in my mind when I look at those numbers relative to that. Actually, that's today's dollars, so we got to escalate those dollars up, and it's probably closer to 475 a square foot. So we're not too
And
far
our
off.
numbers are escalated up already.
They already are there, exactly.
They're
So
escalated
these-
for construction starting in
That's
2
exactly right.
years.
Yeah, and that number at 450 at the top end of those cost per square foot is today's dollars, so I'd have to then multiply times 8% and see what that comes out at. But that, what's good to look at here is there's a lot more in this proposed building than what was in Nashua, so the comparison is great because it's a 200 and something thousand square foot building, it's a middle school, it's got the program, but the program is different and the program costs associated, or costs associated with those programs is different, and it's more expensive.
My understanding is that Nashua also didn't include any sort of,
There's no sustainable, well, I shouldn't say no, they do have dedicated outside air units, they're doing all the air ventilations and the things like that actually codes coming up to pretty high standards these days. And they are doing photovoltaic on the roof, but we're not part of that, so our costs don't include that. But they are doing gas-fired boilers and air handling, internal air handling units, so they're not upgrading the envelope, they're not doing those things that are above and beyond what code might dictate for the systems associated with that building. And those costs of systems run anywhere between 40 and 50% of the cost of construction. So a building cost is about 40 to 50% in systems only.
Mr. Adams and then Mr. Burgess.
Do they have an auditorium? Because that's not on the list there.
Oh, well, that's the theater
Theater.
side of it.
Oh, the
Sorry.
theater is the
Yeah,
auditorium?
Theater
Okay.
auditorium, yeah. No, they do not.
They don't have.
They
And-
also didn't get funding from the state, so they didn't have to meet CHIPS. So in order to get funding, we have to meet CHIPS, so that just means that there's.
And could you just explain what CHIPS is for everyone?
It's high performance schools, so it's kind of like a rating system. It's like LEED for schools. I don't know if you've heard of LEED, that's more well known to people. So they require us to have certain criteria in how we design our walls, certain acoustics, certain amount of light in each classroom. So it's really great to do all those things, but they didn't have that piece in there,
That's a good point.
Correct.
Mr. Burgess?
Just a quick question, at Nashua, did they have any cooling, air conditioner, chillers?
Yes.
Okay, so that
Yep,
was
air
part of their
conditioned,
project.
dehumidified, yep.
And may I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, please.
How realistic is the square foot reduction? Is that something that you think you're gonna meet, or?
I think we're gonna be able to do it. I mean, we'll have to come back to this group and the programming group and kind of show them what that means.
Okay.
But we've been looking at it, so we can bring some sketches and we could email them out to the board and then you can distribute them if people wanna see some of these options drawn out.
Thank you.
Mr. Adams?
Lisa was talking about like the ramp and stuff, and I know she's an advocate for that. I mean, I think it would be helpful to understand, I mean, I get the concept of it. I think the reality of a 250, 260 foot ramp, particularly if it's an exterior one, given that our school year doesn't run in the summertime, but it runs through 3 or 4 months of snow and ice, how inclusive is that gonna be to tell them that, you know, well, if you wanna use the ramp, you gotta go outside? And, you know, depending upon, if it's a ramp that is gonna be used by more than just the one person, then you're not talking about something that's, you know, 3, 4 feet wide, because that's the minimum that you're gonna need. You're talking about something that's 5 to 10 feet wide, so you're taking up the space on multiple floors, depending on where you route this thing, it's gonna be 3,000 or 4,000 square feet likely.
We can
And that you're
bring
gonna
our
have,
sketches.
you know, you can only go, I think it's what, 30 feet without having a
Landing.
platform, a landing, so.
5-foot landing rest areas.
Understanding that they're gonna have a motorized chair to be able to utilize that, but, I think understanding the realities of what that means to traverse this, to find out, you know, what is the likelihood that somebody's gonna wanna go up and down that inside a building, even if it were all inside the building, rather than use an elevator because of the time and it's gonna take to do that.
Ms. O'Rourke and then Ms. Buddy.
Also, if it is an exterior, I honestly can't see us letting kids just use it without supervision. And, you know, if there's no glass wall for us to be able to see students.
I think the discussion of it as an exterior was an emergency egress.
Okay.
I can assure you that the parents who were saying, could there be a ramp inside, had a vision of all students being able, in lieu of stairs, to use a ramp to move from one floor to the next, so all students would be moving together. That was the vision, that was discussed, and,
Yep.
and I, just think about the New England Aquarium. Everyone is really happy to use the ramp at the New England Aquarium.
If you put a big fishbowl in the middle, let them go there
Let's do,
too.
can we add a fishbowl?
And I will do some
Put it on the
data,
list.
I will do some data hunting and look into, because I know that I've anecdotally heard that people actually like ramps more than we understand. So I will go digging for that. I had something else, but it's gone.
Another thing, my wife is a retired school teacher from the Bow School District.
Yep.
And I have to tell you, when she had kids that needed to use the elevator, she had so many volunteers for kids that wanted to ride the elevator with her, because, they just thought this is the cat's meow or the cat's patootie or whatever you wanna call it.
Yeah,
This was a
although
good
not
thing,
being
so.
able to walk the halls with your friends is all,
Absolutely,
is different too,
It's
so.
all good, but there is some,
Yeah.
and a lot of desire to be able to run that elevator up and down too, so.
So I can't speak for all the parents and students with disabilities from the beginning to the end of time, but I bet you that they would make a significant trade on the ramp if there was gonna be a commitment to inclusive school culture, and that all students would be based out of gen ed classrooms, and that there would be a significant culture change. I bet you they would say, forget the ramp, we want inclusive school curriculum and a culture of belonging for all students, so.
How long does it take?
Mr. Richard?
I would say an ADA compliant auditorium would be nice. I'm going to the
Yeah.
concert tonight. It's all over the gym, so.
Okay, anything else? Great. Well, I'm going to close this meeting. I'm going to ask the board members to stay behind for a quick non-public meeting on a personnel issue, but thank you to the building committee members.
Thank you
Appreciate
all
it.
so much.
Thank
This is
you.
such hard work.
Good job.
Truly.